20 years later, the Xenia High School class of '74.
We only sat together since second grade. You know, you think I should know who it is.
We're here, baby. Ready to go.
The streakers went by and we were being mooned. Oh, I remember we were
that.
In the Beaver Creek store.
In many ways, an ordinary class reunion. But not all the memories are ordinary. They were the last senior class of the old Xenia High School. Before they graduated, it was leveled by the '74 tornado.
Do you remember the Red Cross and those little sandwiches they brought in?
Yes, in our little bag.
She said that one of the other teachers destroyed everything. Went in after a tornado and pitched it.
Oh, it didn't blow away.
If it had hit earlier, you know, everybody would have been in school, too.
Maureen Marks stayed at school that day for a play rehearsal.
Well, it was about, the tornado hit at 4:40, and at a little after school let out around 3.
Marty Stewart was at the local McDonald's.
And we're sitting there, and you could see the storm, like the sky was getting dark. It was like a black color, and then they were announcing that there was a tornado warning for our city, which you always think, well, it's not going to ever come here, so.
And there was really no place for us to go. Some of the classrooms were locked, the offices were locked, the girls' restroom had a lot of glass in the windows, and so we ended up in the hallway. It hit very quickly because we didn't have a lot of time. And they say it was extremely loud, and I think it was, but it was just, what I really remember was the impact. It hit and it picked us up and it just pushed us all together.
You almost could lose your breath because it felt like it was like sucking the air out of your lungs, too.
It was over. It was just over that quickly. There were 2 buses on the stage where we had been practicing. The auditorium had imploded.
It was almost like you were kind of in a dream, too, because this really happened our senior year. Now, this did not happen. We're just dreaming this, and we're going to wake up, and it's going to be back to the way it used to be, but it wasn't.
The lives of the members of the class of '74 were changed profoundly by the tornado, but they all survived it, and that was the theme we heard throughout Xenia: survival. Tuffy Snyder's story of survival has become folk legend in Xenia. He owned his own pharmacy in downtown Xenia in 1974, and his favorite watering hole was the Hofbrau House across the street. The Hofbrau House beer cooler was Tuffy's storm shelter.
I walked back out from the pharmacy, and that's when I looked west from the corner of town, and 2 blocks away, and maybe 2 blocks in the air, it was the most awesome thing I'd ever seen. I couldn't tear myself away from looking at it. I would have stood there and let it blow right over me, but I'm not shaking my head. My God, my friends are over at the bar. This is really coming. And then I ran back across the street, told them that it's here. And there's some debate about how many of us wedged ourselves into the beer cooler. Some say 8, some say 13 or 14, but it was really a cozy arrangement in the beer cooler.
Yeah, of course.
Sheila Edwards' story is the stuff of nightmares. The back of her head was cut from ear to ear, her neck broken as she used her body to shelter the 5 children in her home and managed to save their lives.
And then I heard the hail and stuff, and then I heard glass break, and at the same time I heard glass break. It's just like a big whoosh. I mean, I couldn't feel anybody anymore. I didn't know. I knew they were gone out from under me. I wasn't sure where I was. And I just got up, and I should have 5 kids, so I found 4. Found Stacy's hand sticking out in the rubble, and just picked him up, took the 2x4s and things off him, and walked through my backyard. I found out the next day the people I babysat for was right across the street. People next to them had lost their 15-year-old son. The lady right next to them was 8 months pregnant, Joyce Beacon. She was killed. And behind me, about 3 houses down, little Brian Baker was killed. He was 5. And right on Gayhart, which is at our other corner family to a mother and a child were killed. So it was right there all around us.
The 34 people who died at Xenia were far too many to lose, but so many more died at Murfreesboro in 1925.
Xenia is typical of the kind of tornado that would have produced 100 to 200 deaths 50 or 60 years ago, before any watch warning or awareness was in place. Even people in Xenia who say they were not warned had their life saved because they were actually getting 20 years of awareness and preparedness training through the media, and they knew what to do. They went outside. They were looking at the sky. 50 or 60 years ago, the idea of a tornado would have never occurred to them.
Our understanding of tornadoes exploded in the 1970s through photogrammetry, ground damage pattern surveys, and the development of Doppler radar. Dr. Fujita's F-scale standardized wind damage measurements for all researchers. Amateur tornado photography proliferated, and scientists from the National Severe Storms Laboratory armed themselves with motion picture cameras as proven research tools.
Part 2 of our story, When Exposures, continues.
I was diagnosed with
Look at the debris it's beginning to pick up down on the ground. Getting bigger.
That looks bigger than that when we seen it the first time, isn't it?
Not really. First time I ever seen one. You can even see it.
You've seen one.
Nah, I was under the bed. You can see it. Kitten, see all that debris?
You know, you would think, is it over there in that,
That's right.
It's in that there housing development over there across Broadway.
In April of 1991, home video cameras all around Wichita and Andover, Kansas, recorded scenes like this. The popularity of home video has made tornado video downright commonplace. This sequence, shot by Mike Lloyd, is one of many of the Andover tornado.
yeah, it's time to get in.
Getting too close for something.
Oh, look at the snuff line.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Kath. I'll be down there real quick.
The storm's beautiful fury is almost more than an amateur videographer can resist.
Getting right there. It's going to be here in just a minute.
You know it's dangerous. You know it can kill.
Kathy, downstairs right now.
And yet the picture in that viewfinder, the spectacle before you, is spellbinding.
Everybody stay in the house. It's going right through that. It's going right through that mobile home park.
Then the fascination can turn to horror.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God.
It went that way?
Yeah, it went
Right, it went right.
okay. It's gone right through. That's it. That's it. Okay.
This video of the same tornado was shot by meteorologist and storm chaser John Davies. This is the tornado that killed 17 people as it passed through South Wichita and Andover. Scored well on the Andover outbreak. Meteorologists at the Weather Channel were so confident of tornadic conditions, we flew a crew to Wichita 24 hours before the storm hit.
Well, in this particular situation, we had a very obvious tornadic potential, and the Wichita area was kind of in a 100-mile swath of, okay, somewhere in this area we're going to have a tornado, and we were just a little bit lucky in sending our crew exactly where a tornado hit. On any Given tornado situation, it's more like about 50% accuracy on predicting the area in which a tornado might form.
Which is why Project Vortex was born. This armada of strange vehicles lined up in the parking lot at the National Severe Storms Lab are part of the largest tornado research project in history. Scientists from all over the country with portable Doppler radar and research airplanes and every kind of measuring device known to meteorology came to Norman, Oklahoma in the spring of 1994 to gather data and chase tornadoes.
Up here, it's growing pretty much about.
And I've always been very interested in going out and gathering data on supercells in a systematic way. In fact, I proposed this idea back in the early 80s.
Eric Rasmussen heads Project Vortex. He's chased storms for 20 years, and on a chase in 1981 for NSSL, captured one of the most graceful tornadoes ever shot on film.
There are good theories now that tell us why a storm starts rotating in its middle levels, and that seems to be a prerequisite for tornadoes from supercell storms. And that also happens to be something we can see very well with Doppler radars. These radars can see very well what kind of airflow there is in the middle levels of a thunderstorm, but we can't really tell what's going on at the ground. But if in Vortex we can establish the connection, the physical connection between the processes happening in the middle levels of the thunderstorm and the processes that actually cause a tornado at the surface, then we've gained an important piece of knowledge that will help Weather Service meteorologists determine if what they're seeing on radar can actually lead to a tornado or not.
But for much of the spring of 1994, the Armada stayed in the parking lot. Some NSSL researchers felt that the tail end of an El Nino had suppressed tornado development in Oklahoma and Kansas. High-pressure ridges were the season's dominant features.
Had we had an experiment, a ridge experiment, Ridge-X, then we'd be getting all this flow and storms. Yeah.
A couple of weeks later, our crew rejoined the Armada in Dodge City, Kansas. The potential wasn't great, but things were getting desperate.
I personally am not that incredibly optimistic. Maybe we will find out if the atmosphere really does care about helicity today. But I'm a little worried about the strength of the upper tropospheric flow. I don't know if we'll have 50 knots up high, and that bothers me a lot. What the heck will go up?
Must be a storm day.
Drive into southern Nebraska. Watch carefully for this wind shift and/or the low-level theta E gradient. When you see it, continue 10 miles.
Just ahead, the conclusion of our story.
The updraft rain down. Not to say it won't reform to the south, so we're watching it closely.
I don't know what I want to do with this yet, because I don't want to get too far in front of it because we aren't going to see anything from that rain. And I'm almost, if it's like the storms from last week, we're going to chase it from the southwest, not from the southeast. So.
How many miles have we come for this?
We'll just keep improvising and get a little data here and there. It's obviously not a supercell and not about to become one, so just collect the data we can.
It was just very strange to be hearing these reports of what was going on aloft, and I had teams all around that area. I had one directly underneath that spot, and nothing was being reported at all, just light wind. We saw, at very best, very weak rotation, and yet just above cloud base where the radar was seeing, the rotation was quite strong. We'd like to find out why that was happening, because in the future, if a meteorologist sees that kind of strong rotation, we'd like them to be able to say, yes, but there probably isn't a tornado.
Project Vortex did not catch a tornado on video from the ground in 1994. The P-3 research plane got a few seconds on tape from the air, but the ground crews were cut off. And from their angle, the funnel was rain-wrapped and invisible.
It was a tornado drought. Oklahoma had the record fewest tornadoes for the month of May. It was a tie. And I believe Kansas may have been close to a record also. And so we didn't get the kind of storms or the quality of storms that we were hoping.
Well, it hasn't changed anyone's commitment. We've had several, even though we haven't had any tornadoes, we've gotten lots of, I would say, 5 to 7 really good data sets. And we can take that knowledge and go, you know, really into next year from a running start and really get to it.
Like baseball fans at the end of a losing season, maybe next year. But in this case, the odds are in Vortex's favor. With a little luck, these scientists will make some breakthroughs during the 1995 season's chases. If they capture those tornadoes, they'll bring back important insights for tornado forecasters. But most of the tornadoes captured on video next year will be by ordinary people. They'll be the dedicated chasers, of course, driving 500 or 600 miles a day just on the chance they'll catch a tornado.
The tornado is north of that location about a mile and a half. The tornado is beginning to rope out.
Go on downstairs, Mother.
And then there'll be the rest of us. If we're confronted with this life-threatening force, we'll be torn by the need to take shelter and the overwhelming desire to watch and record this magnificent spectacle.
I want to get as much as possible.
As long as we all remember that this spectacle kills and maims, that one life is worth 1,000 videos, science can only benefit from the video bonanza, especially when the chasing is done by trained meteorologists who know where to go, what to look for, and when to get out of the way.
My God!
But even within the most sophisticated tornado research projects, the love of the chase may be as much a driving force as the dedication to science. Dr. Jerry Straka is second in command on Project Vortex.
Well, I think the first time I chased was probably when I was 13 or 14. I was standing on my roof watching a tornado about a mile south of my house, which was doing damage on the ground. My father was yelling at me as I was being pelleted by hailstones, and we got in the car and we went after it. So it was pretty exciting. I really liked it. And I've done it ever since.
We'd like to remind you that storm chasing is dangerous business. It's certainly not something in which we encourage amateurs to get involved. But we suspect that as long as there are video cameras around, there will be a lot of great research material in the coming years. Not to mention a lot of spectacular video. Thanks for joining us on Exposures. I'm Dennis Smith.